This is the Capitol Rundown.
This will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants. They were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places.
Man up, own it, apologize, and talk about the lessons you've learned so you're not going to repeat this.
I just took a photo of it, and I'm titling the photo "The Invisible President."
The Capitol Rundown starts now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Siobhan Klebfer. There's a lot happening in Michigan politics from Lansing to Washington, D.C. And we're starting this morning with the auto industry and new tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. Signing an executive order at the White House on Wednesday, the president said the U.S. will charge a 25% tariff on all foreign-made autos. The tax will also apply to American brands that manufacture their cars overseas, and it's likely to increase prices for consumers. The plan is designed to push companies to open more factories in the U.S., and the president says that process is already underway.
This will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants. They were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped and they're moving them to our country. And
the tariffs are due to go into effect on April 2nd. Nearly half of all vehicles sold in the U.S. are imported. The Trump administration is doing damage control after The Atlantic released more text messages detailing attack plans from a group chat, which included national security officials. The president is standing by his team while Democrats are calling for harsher punishments. Our Washington correspondent Basil John reports on the leaked chat group saga.
With the release of these latest messages, which included details about when military strikes would happen, members of the administration have pushed back on the criticism of the leak.
President Donald Trump called the recent report from The Atlantic a witch hunt after the magazine released the entire chat among national security officials detailing attacks against Yemen's Houthis.
there was no harm done because the attack was unbelievably successful.
The officials used the messaging app Signal, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is shown providing exact timings of warplane launches and when bombs would drop.
Provide updates in real time, general updates in real time, keep everybody informed. That's what I did. That's my job.
The administration doubled down and says these were not war plans.
Why did The Atlantic downgrade their allegation about war plans to attack plans? They're now playing word games.
But over on Capitol Hill, Democrats were furious.
I think that it's by the awesome grace of God that we are not mourning dead pilots right now.
And some are calling for Hegseth to resign over this.
This is classified information. It's a weapon system as well as sequence of strikes, as well as details about the operations. He needs to resign immediately.
Pete Hegseth should resign immediately or be fired.
When asked if anyone would lose their jobs over this leak, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt would not provide a yes or a no. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
And Michigan's freshman Senator, Democrat Elissa Slotkin, released a statement Thursday reacting to the revelation that administration officials were using the Signal app. Senator Slotkin, who is a former CIA officer, says military service members' lives were put in danger by officials using the app. She also specifically called out Defense Secretary Hegseth.
No matter what, we need a full independent investigation by the Senate Armed Services Committee. And then for Mr. Hegseth, who understands better than most that leadership climate in the military is set at the top, should own his own words, take responsibility for his actions, and provide accountability on him and his team. It's exactly what the military is trained to do: accountability and responsibility. Man up, own it, apologize, and talk about the lessons you've learned so you're not going to repeat this, and communicate that to the force.
Well, coming up next, state lawmakers are taking the Secretary of State and others to court over election laws. But first, we're going to have the details on how the president is working to change the electoral process. That and a lot more when the Capitol Rundown returns. Welcome back. President Trump on Tuesday signed a sweeping executive action to overhaul U.S. elections. It would require documentary proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections and mandate that all ballots be received by Election Day across the country. The order claims the U.S. has not adequately enforced federal election requirements, citing as examples prohibiting states from counting ballots received after Election Day or prohibiting non-citizens from registering to vote. The order says the U.S. has failed to enforce basic and necessary election protections.
Election fraud, you've heard the term. We'll end it, hopefully. At least this will go a long way toward ending it. There are other steps that we will be taking in the coming weeks, and we think we'll be able to end up getting fair elections. Perhaps some people think I shouldn't be complaining because we won in a landslide, but we got to straighten out our election. This country is so sick because of the election, the fake elections and the bad elections, and we're going to straighten it out one way or the other.
It also calls on states to work with federal agencies to share voter lists and prosecute election crimes. The president also threatened to pull federal funding from states where election officials are not in compliance. David Becker, the CEO of the Center for Election Innovation and Research, characterized the order as a, quote, federal takeover of the constitutional authority of local and state governments to run elections.
So putting aside whether there's any justification for any of these massive changes, we should remember the Constitution has something called the Elections Clause, and it says the time, place, and manner of elections is left to the states and the legislatures of the states. And when Democrats have tried to push massive election overhauls like H.R. 1 in 2021, Republicans raised an uproar, said this is a federal takeover of elections. This is, in many ways, even more radical. It may require states to change all of their election technology. It probably comes with a price tag of about tens of billions of dollars just eyeballing at what this would require. It's a massive overhaul, and of course it has no congressional authority behind it.
And in Lansing, Republican state lawmakers are now petitioning the United States Supreme Court to declare several Michigan election laws approved by voters to be unconstitutional. The lawsuit claims Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson violated their constitutional rights by enforcing laws passed through ballot proposals in 2018 and 2022. Those proposals amend the state constitution and include automatic voter registration, no reason absentee voting, and the creation of an independent commission to redraw legislative and congressional district boundaries. The group of Republicans says those amendments should not apply to federal elections because the U.S. Constitution delegates election procedures to state legislatures. Secretary Benson, who is running for the Democratic nomination for governor, issued a statement in response. In it, the secretary said, quote, the idea that the time, place, and manner of federal elections lawmaking is beyond the right of voters to self-determine is anti-democratic, and already multiple courts have reaffirmed this under law. State Senators Jonathan Lindsay and James Runstead are plaintiffs, and as you can see, there are many other Republican state representatives also listed. Former State Representative Neil Frisky is also on the document. A federal district court dismissed the lawmakers' initial lawsuit in 2023, citing a lack of standing. This one names Secretary Benson, Governor Whitmer, and State Director of Elections Jonathan Grater as defendants. Well, coming up, our Capitol correspondent will be here with a look at what's happening behind the scenes in Lansing. But first, the president is continuing his plan to close the U.S. Department of Education. That and much more coming up. A massive shakeup in the U.S. education system. President Trump has announced plans to move the Education Department's $1 trillion student loan portfolio to the Small Business Administration. And even more changes are on the way. Our Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson reports on what's next.
With efforts underway to dismantle the Department of Education, a big question is, what happens to federal student loans?
A portfolio that's very large, lots of loans. Tens of thousands of loans.
President Trump announced Friday the government's $1 trillion student loan program will shift into the Small Business Administration.
And they're all set for it. They're waiting for it. It'll be serviced much better than it has in the past. It's been a mess.
Critics like James Kvaal, who served as Undersecretary of Education in the Biden administration, say The SBA lacks the experience in handling student debt.
I think it's going to be very disruptive.
The president also announced protections for students with disabilities, and school food programs will move to the Department of Health and Human Services. Kaval worries that could weaken enforcement in schools.
They've already done a lot of damage to the capacity to run these programs effectively.
But at the White House, Education Secretary Linda McMahon told me funding for students with special needs predates the Department of Education.
It was handled very well before there was a Department of Education. It will be handled very well again, and hopefully, as the president said, there'd be more money going to the states, not less money.
When it comes to McMahon's department, only Congress can fully shut it down. Reporting in Washington, Rashad Hudson.
Staying with the Trump administration and education, Secretary McMahon now says Columbia University is on the right track toward recovering federal funding. The elite New York City University agreed to implement a host of policy changes demanded by the Trump administration. The White House has pulled $400 million in research grants and other funding over campus protests against Israel's military campaign in Gaza. Federal officials demanded 9 separate changes to the university's academic and security policies. And last week, the Education Department announced investigations into dozens of universities for alleged racial discrimination based around their efforts to promote equity. Those include the University of Michigan and Grand Valley State University. Experts say these moves to financially impact higher education could affect much more than campus life.
You might say, well, you know, they did something wrong, they've got to pay. And so someone could reasonably understand that. But if we're talking about clawing back tens of millions of dollars or more from a university, the economic impact on that community is going to be pretty profound. So Michigan has 15 public universities, and I went and looked at some federal data on how many people they employ, and as of 2023, they employed about 61,000 full-time equivalent staff members. If there were big financial losses for the higher education sector in the state of Michigan, I think that would affect the economy of Michigan overall. Right, there are literally tens of thousands of jobs at stake.
Coming up next on The Rundown, we're going to check in with our Capitol correspondent. Tim Skubic will be here to tell us more about a possible tax increase on EV drivers in Michigan. We'll be right back. Welcome back. On Wednesday, the Speaker of the State House raised the possibility of increasing taxes on Michiganders who drive electric vehicles. The Rundown's Megan Vaselli asked our Capitol correspondent Tim Skubic for his take.
It's time to get updated in Michigan politics, and there's nobody better than our own Tim Skubic. Tim, State House Speaker Matt Hall recently talked about something Republicans don't usually say out loud: raising taxes. So will Michigan EV drivers be paying more in the near future?
Well, Megan, this is kind of a major story. As you know, the governor is on a mission to fix the roads, and Matt Hall, the House Republican Speaker, has joined her on that journey. She has said all along through these conversations that we need new revenue. The Speaker, up until this week, has not signed off on new revenue, but now he has. In an interview with TV6 News, he confirmed that he will support, if the governor does support, increasing the fees on electric vehicle owners. Now, there are about 55,000, give or take a few, in the state of Michigan that have EV cars. The Speaker says these folks are making over $100,000 a year, most of them, and so they can afford this. Plus, he says it's a fairness issue. As everybody knows, generally motorists without EVs have to go past the gas station and go in and get gas. The EV owners can just drive right on by and go to their stations to get some juice rather than gas. So the Speaker concludes EV owners are not paying their fair share, even though they would disagree. And so he has said, basically, if the governor goes there and wants to increase the fees on EV drivers, the Speaker will be in her corner. He concedes that is a tax increase, but it's one that he is willing to support. And I must tell you that people in this town usually hear this Republican speaker say anything that has the two words tax increase in it. But that's why this is such an important story, because if the governor, and he lock up on this issue, its chances of passing are pretty good, even though it's not a done deal yet. So we'll see how the story plays out.
All right, Tim, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Well, just ahead, a capital city found itself at the center of a disagreement between Donald Trump and the art world. Coming up, we'll tell you what caused the complaint from the president. Stay tuned. Welcome back. President Donald Trump often takes to social media to air his grievances about various things. One of the latest is a painting hung in Colorado's state capitol. Colorado Republicans raised more than $10,000 to commission the Trump painting that had been in the state capitol since 2019 alongside other U.S. presidents. Well, sometime late Monday or early Tuesday, the portrait was removed and put in storage. The move came at the request of Colorado Republicans after President Trump claimed the artist had purposefully distorted him. A recent visitor to the Capitol from Michigan noticed the painting's absence.
I just took a photo of it, and I'm titling the photo "The Invisible President." And people can read into that whatever they want.
Well, before his portrait was installed, the prankster placed a picture of Russian President Vladimir Putin near the spot intended for President Trump. If you're interested in getting more political news from here in Michigan and Washington, we've got just the thing for you. You can sign up for our Capitol Rundown newsletter. It's just one email each week, and you can get it by pointing your cell phone camera at the screen right now. This will take you to the sign-up page, or you can head to WLNS.com/newsletter. And that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching the Capitol Rundown. We will see you all again right here next week.